In this video, let us work on the thumbnails for our matte painting. Before we start to paint, let me go over the process with you guys first. I'm going to start by blocking in the overall shapes of the primary elements. Here, we will look into getting a proper silhouette first and putting in solid colors. That is followed by establishing a light source. Here, we will start by using a couple of values to indicate light and shadow, and later on start to refine it. Our aim is to do a thumbnail in about 10 to 15 minutes. We do not want to spend a lot of time here adding in details. Instead, we use the thumbnail stage to build a composition, establish lighting direction, and get something out for the client to sign off on. I have included this thumbnails template PSD within the project files. To start with, let's make a new layer under the first thumbnail group folder. Let me zoom in and call that layer HZ for horizon. And I am going to keep the horizon similar to what we saw in the plate. Let's make a new layer and call that foreground. Now let's try to draw what we saw in the plate. Again, being really rough at this stage, we don't want to get into any sort of details. This is supposed to be really general, nothing specific at this point. Now throughout the tutorial, we are going to follow the same principle, that is, first work on the broad strokes, get them working, and then work on the details when the time comes. Here I'm just filling up the selection with black. Let's try and match our mountain profile to what we saw in the plate. Again, just giving a general shape idea to it. Remember, on the left side where we have to paint the light out, we also have to extend the cliff up. So I'm just trying to block in some ideas on that section. Now let us choose a lighter color compared to our full pitch dark black and start blocking out our mid-ground mountain. Again, I'm just painting with complete 100% opacity. There is no pressure sensitivity onto this brush. Blocking out the shape of the mid-ground mountain and filling it up with the same solid color. Let's make another new layer and call that background and choose an even lighter color, an even lighter gray that is, and block out our background mountain. Now this background mountain needs to have a really strong or a dominant presence, so let's make sure that our silhouette reflects this properly. Switching back to the eraser brush to just refine the shape. Now my workflow during this initial blocking in phase revolves around switching between the brush and the eraser until I get a silhouette or a shape which I'm happy with, and keeping everything in solid colors. I do like the idea of this mountain having a really strong dominant peak which makes it stand out. So on a new layer, I'll call that sky, going over to my tool presets and choosing the soft round pressure there. Now this brush is exactly the same as the default soft round brush in Photoshop. I just have opacity and flow set to pen pressure on this. And I save the most frequently used brushes and their settings into my tool presets. Switching over to my gradient tool and using a standard color to transparent one, let me add in a light direction to it. Now, along with the mountains, another important section that we need to block out is the sci-fi base. Let me go over and choose the elliptical marquee, then switch back to the rectangular one and subtract out from the primary selection. Go over to my chalk brush and just fill the selection in. Now let me move this dome into place. Transform it to get the right size. Now that takes care of our base layout. The next thing I'm going to do is to balance the levels between all the three mountain layers, and also going to save the file. I'm going to do both of these things while we are away. That's I'm going to pause the video and let's resume when that is done. So I also went in and refined the silhouettes a little bit, as well as balanced the layers and added a ground layer in front. So let me choose the mid-ground layer and do a clipping mask to it. And now in this phase, what we're going to do is only block in a general lighting direction onto our silhouettes. Again, playing with just solid colors. I'm indicating the lighter side of the mountain. Now throughout this video, if I'm going to do any repetitive task, that is, say I've shown you guys the technique of what I am doing, and I just have to apply the same onto a lot of different layers, I'm going to be pausing the video while I go ahead and complete that. Now, this is a good example where I can pause the video and continue to block out the lighting on the image. At the start, I'm just using solid colors as I've shown you, and later on, I can use the same chalk brush with pressure sensitivity to give something more for the eyes to see. And let's resume the video once I've done all of that. So here we are. I spent a couple of minutes adding some shape and form to our thumbnail. Another idea is to have a larger presence to the base with towers or multiple domes. Similarly, I also made two more concepts, spending about 10 to 15 minutes each on them. Now with these, I went an additional step forward. In version 2, the dominant peak is a few mountains behind, and in version 3, the idea is to have a valley lead into the mountain behind and a larger dome. Now these are very basic, and a reason for that is we do not want to get into details at this point. Details will start to come in when we work on the matte painting. Also, we don't want them to comment on details and the specifics, but just to get a general idea of the direction we are headed into. So in this lesson, we went over some simple thumbnails, and now let's send this over to them and pick it up in the next video with some client notes.